Hello, so it's actually October 28, 11:36 p.m. here on my clock, and welcome back to my channel and welcome back to my home. I enjoyed talking to you about the books that I've read on August, and I just remember that as the month ends now on October, I haven't been able to wrap up the books that I've read on September, and I won't let that pass. I wasn't able to talk to one person about these books because, I don't know, am I friendless? I read 5 books as far as I can remember. Let me give to you some of my takes without spoiling much. And this is also a recommendation in case you're looking for a book that you want to buy, authors that you want to support. So, let's start. So this one is titled Wing of the Locust by Joel Donato Ching. It actually won the Asian Book Award. Just recently, it also is nominated for the Madrigal Gonzalez First Book Award. This book is actually set in imagined kingdoms in the pre-colonial Philippines before the Spanish colonized our lands. Our main character here is Tuan, and he was actually summoned by the Dato to be an apprentice to Muhen. And Muhen here is a very sketchy figure in the society because he is a mambabarang. The mambabarang is operationally defined as mambabarang is a person who practices the art of using insects for espionage, sabotage, and healing. We follow his adventures, his discovery, and at the same time on how he makes meaning of the persons and the society around him. The first thing that I noticed here is it follows the structure of Joseph Campbell's The Journey of a Hero. This formula can be seen in many adventure stories like Harry Potter and Kung Fu Panda and others. With that familiar concept, it's easy to associate the character to ourselves. It utilizes horror, but at the same time, in the most interesting part is it uses Tagalog folklore and Tagalog myth. Now, which was done for me, it was done very respectfully. It's well researched, and the world building here is very thorough. Yeah. And in relation to the things that I pointed out a while ago about history and folk tales, this book is also astounding to me because Tuan is not of a noble rank. He belongs to a social class called Alipin. He seems to show to us, to depict to us how old feudal structures are and how oppressive it is to some people. And at the same time, it also argues that Alipins, like Tuan, are also very important and they have a potential to contribute to the societies. So it has its horror element that sometimes it turns grotesque the way he describes, especially on the part of the interaction between Muhen and Tuan. The way he interpreted it is that this is an allegory about growing up and acceptance. We can really relate to the characters here, especially Tuan. But for me, the most interesting character is Muhen, the mentor of Tuan, because he is shunned by the society and that he's very different. That even Tuan, the student, has doubts. Yeah, so yeah, we can also extend it to the way we treat people who are very different to us. Those are the good things that I can say on this book. But if there's anything that I did notice, is that it spends so much time on world building and exposition that I found it to be dragging, especially on the middle part. I found it hard to finish this book because I thought that it lost its spark on the middle. But I want you to hold on to it because the last parts of it are very thrilling and so exciting. So yeah, and another thing is that I felt like it's still incomplete, and I'm hinting that there will be a part 2 of this. and I'm all for supporting this. So I would recommend this to you if you like fantasy, if you like some inspiration, some writing inspiration, and if you like to get to know our country more. So there. So this is Isang Dekadang Resty, nobela ni Ortua, Almero. So the title itself gives away what the story is all about. So this is the 10-year journey of Restituto de Maculangan, the real name, the full name of Resty. And I really like this book. Promise, it navigates the experiences of poverty, of family structure. Those are the things that I really like to explore, about loss of innocence, migrant lives, migrant work, and your identity and your sexuality. And I remembered my childhood while reading this, because on the surface, my childhood was normal. It was happy. But looking at it now, it's actually marred with a lot of problems and things that I do not understand, like the politics, like the corruption during ERA and GMA. Well, it's a different time in Isang Dekadang Resty, because the milieu was on 80s to 90s. But it's the same cycle, you know. I also remembered being pitted in an environment made up of adults, and it's hard to live that way. No child deserves to be poor, to be to have broken family, and to not have a support system which is solid. Again, I really like this book because it's very class conscious, and it makes up a very good discussion about the disparity of the rich and the poor. It's called Isang Dekadang Resty, 1 decade. So the time element here, the way we follow his life, is tricky. How fast changing it is, his life as he grows old. But there's one thing which is constant here, and that is poverty. And another thing that I noticed on this book is that even if it's said to be a novel, Isang Dekadang Resty is made up of chapters that can be a standalone short story, which is not a bad thing, you know, because in each of the chapter there is a sense of completion. You feel like you are already satisfied, but of course, you still want to know how he fared until the very last chapter. So I swear that I don't want to spoil this book to you, but the ending, let me just say this, the ending is so good. It made my stomach squirm because of this important symbol that was projected on the ending, and it was subverted. This is to say that if you're watching this and if you like reading books, especially if you're a teacher, you should let your students read this, and you encourage students read Isang Dekadang Resty. Third book, Me Talk Pretty One Day by David Sedaris. I've read some of his essays and most of the anthologies in, Best American Essays and all those things. But I haven't had the chance to read his book in its entirety. And I also watched him on stand-up comedies, on YouTube videos, and I think he was on RuPaul's Drag Race. Yeah. Let me just talk to you about an exciting thing about this book. So, I bought it in book sale in Jensen. It's just 175 pesos. And it has its sticky note here. And it has his signature. So, thank you, Beth. I felt like this was the closest that I've ever had to any foreign author. So, and it's David Sedaris. Yeah. I paired it actually with an audiobook. I know that he's a performer and he likes reading what he has written down. So, it's a full reading experience for me to listen to his voice. And there are other chapters in which it was done with a live audience. So it's very, very, very extremely funny. That's one thing that I like to say about this book. Sometimes you feel so sorry that you are laughing because sometimes he goes for the jugular He talks about his cat, he talks about his tutor in French, and all of the mishaps and misunderstanding that he has. And I really identified with him. There's one chapter here that talks about his speech, the way he slurs, and his voice quality. And to be honest, that's one of my insecurities, that I don't have a deep voice, and they sometimes mistake me for a 12-year-old boy. And he made it so funny that I forgot that I hated myself because of that. David Sedaris is so good with this, no? On talking about mundane things and making it very humorous. So if you want to have a light-hearted week, I want you to read this, and I commit myself to read more of him and to follow his comic activities, whatever that is. So yeah.
XOXO.
My fourth book is Here's New York by E.B. White. He is well known for his children's book like Stuart Little and my favorite, Charlotte's Web. And E.B. White also co-wrote this book called Elements of Style with William Strunk. And that is considered to be the Bible of most authors and some college entry students. That's a required reading in some grammar classes. So it's a very slim book. It's made up of 56 pages, and I bet that you can read it in just one sitting. Talks about New York City, but I'm not sure if everybody can relate to it. But this is a classic case on travelogue and place writing. I think if you want to write about your home or about your city, this is worth reading and this is worth investigating. He conveyed that the place is not just a physical space, but this is also a psychological condition, right? It's the soul, no? It also talks about the people. There's also a caveat here, no? I think it was introduced, no, if you're going to read the introduction. This book is already dated on its description on New York. Now, there are some places that he described that is not part of New York anymore. If you're going to compare it in 1948 versus 2021, So yeah, it's dated. Then again, it's written in 1948. And as far as I can remember, it predates the civil rights movement. And what I admire about this essay is that he did not shy away from telling his stand about this issue. And he sees right through the racism in America through its urban politics. He exposes here the imbalance of the welfare being received by the blacks and the whites. And I think that's one layer that I really like about this book. Aside from it being so romantic about his fascination about this place. Then again, read this. E.B. White is universally acknowledged to be one of the best writers ever produced in contemporary American literature. So, it's worth a try.
XOXO.
The final book that I've read in the month of September is Trust Exercise by Choi. And I'll try my very best to explain this without sounding so stupid because it's a very smart book. Trust Exercise actually won the 2019 National Book Award for Fiction. And not everybody liked it. Even if you look at Goodreads, some people like it. It's so polarized. People gave it 1 star, some people gave it 5 star. And in my opinion, and in my verdict, I like this book so much. This is one of the best books that I've read in 2021. No kidding. So I would describe Trust Exercise to be inventive, experimental, and that it pushes the frontier of prose writing. No? Yeah, I guess one of the reasons why some people don't like it is that it's hard to read. I'm not saying I'm smart, but I appreciated this book. So it's a very simple premise. It's about young lovers in high school and their relationship blossomed amidst their acting exercises, their acting club. And trust exercises is actually an acting exercise which was conducted by their flamboyant theater mentor. So that's how this story goes, no? Trust exercise talks about large themes like young love, fact versus fiction, and at the same time it also talks about the dangerous situations that women are facing, especially about sexual abuse. You know that I'm a teacher, right? So for this book to be set in a school ground in which students, especially women, are vulnerable to abuses being perpetuated by teachers, I feel so sad. It really saddens me that this book exposes the power dynamics between the teacher and the students. Let's be honest, there are many anecdotes of teachers, taking advantage of their power over their students, thereby being a sexual predator to the women or to the men, the college students. And I find it so uncomfortable that teachers are supposed to be the one guiding their students. I don't have all of the answers about this hot issue on the Me Too movement, but what I'm sure about is that school is supposed to be a safe space for students, right? A while ago, I told you that it pushes the boundaries of telling a story. In literature, we have this concept or style in which we call metafiction. Most of the novels that uses metafiction goes along the storyline of a novelist writing a novel. So, and that is what this is all about. I am paying more attention on the style. I am paying more attention on speculating whether the narrator is reliable or not, or if the assumed writer in this metafiction is telling a lie or a truth. So it really blows my mind while reading it. Looking at it now, I understand why this book is very polarizing in the Goodreads community as far as I'm concerned. It's because the book necessitates for you to read more closely, and I think you cannot appreciate the book if what you are looking for is, something that is easy to grasp. Its writing is very sophisticated. It's something that I haven't read before. That's why I can say that this is one of the best books that I've read. Trust Exercise by Susan Choi. I'm so proud of my reading track record in September. I hope that you hang in there and you tell me whether you've read this book or not, or if you're interested to read this book or not. So there, subscribe to my channel. More nerding out and more book talks for everyone. Goodbye.